For years, Officer Gregory Calloway and Officer Anthony Miller did whatever they wanted. Every traffic stop was a trap. Every complaint disappeared. They ruled through fear, knowing no one could touch them, until they harassed the wrong man. A black man walking his German Shepherd through a quiet neighborhood. A man they assumed was powerless, just another face they could intimidate. When he didn't submit, when he questioned their authority, they escalated. Harsh words became threats. Threats became violence. And when his dog stepped forward, one of them reached for his gun. Now, Malcolm Hayes, a Delta Force operative with nothing left to lose, is coming for them. The officers thought they understood power, thought their badges made them untouchable, but they have no idea what's coming. Justice will be swift and painful. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the quiet suburban street, its golden light filtering through the trees that lined the neatly paved sidewalks. Rex's paws tapped rhythmically against the concrete, his ears flicking at the distant hum of a lawnmower, the occasional chirp of birds hidden among the branches. His leash hung loosely in Malcolm's grip, the German Shepherd moving in perfect sync with his owner, alert but relaxed. It was a beautiful day, one of those rare moments when the world felt still, uncomplicated. Malcolm took a slow breath, inhaling the crisp scent of freshly cut grass, feeling the weight of the day ease just slightly. This walk was part of his routine, a simple pleasure after long weeks spent traveling for work. He had been away longer than usual this time, overseeing security operations overseas. Now that he was back, he wanted nothing more than to enjoy the little things. A quiet walk with Rex, the feeling of the sun on his skin, the comfort of home. Yet, even as he savored the moment, he was aware of the eyes. It always happened. A car rolling to a slow stop at a nearby intersection, the slight movement of a curtain in a second-story window, a jogger who hesitated just a little too long before continuing past. Malcolm had spent most of his adult life in high-risk environments, where survival depended on reading a situation before it unfolded. Out there, it was about identifying threats, enemy combatants, hidden explosives, unseen dangers waiting in the shadows. Here, in the place that was supposed to be home, it was different. Subtler, less overt, but no less real. He felt it in the way strangers' eyes lingered on him just a second too long, in the way some clutched their purses a little tighter, in the way a man walking his golden retriever had crossed the street last week without ever making eye contact. He had done nothing but exist. And still, it was enough to make people uneasy. It was ironic, really. He had spent over a decade in the most elite counterterrorism unit in the world, the U.S. Army's Delta Force. He had operated in places where stepping into the wrong alley meant never stepping out again, where trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. He had taken down warlords, dismantled terrorist cells, protected people who never even knew they were in danger. And yet, here, in his own neighborhood, the place he had paid for with blood, sweat, and sacrifice, he was the one who didn't belong. A car turned the corner ahead, creeping forward at a pace that felt too deliberate. Malcolm glanced toward it, already knowing what he was about to see. The black and white paint job, the familiar shape of the police cruiser, the low, humming growl in Rex's chest was so soft that no one else would have heard it. Malcolm gave the leash a small tug. "Easy, boy." His voice was calm, soothing. Rex obeyed instantly, his head tilting toward Malcolm as if reading his expression. The cruiser slowed as it pulled alongside him, matching his pace. Then came the voice. "Afternoon, sir." Malcolm stopped walking, turning toward the vehicle with measured ease. His posture was relaxed, his expression neutral. No tension, no challenge. "Afternoon, officer," he replied, keeping his tone polite. Always polite. The driver, Officer Calloway, leaned against the open window, his expression unreadable, but his eyes assessing, cataloging, searching. His partner, Officer Miller, had already stepped out of the vehicle, his boots crunching against the pavement as he positioned himself just a few steps away. Close enough to intimidate, far enough to claim it wasn't intentional. They weren't here for a friendly chat. "You live around here?" Calloway asked, tilting his head slightly. His voice was casual, too casual. "Yes, sir," Malcolm answered without hesitation. Calloway's lips twitched, like he wasn't expecting the automatic respect. "That's so. Funny. Don't think I've seen you before." Malcolm offered a small, polite nod. "I travel a lot for work. Security contracting overseas. Just got back a few days ago." Miller scoffed under his breath, shaking his head. "Security contracting? That's some kind of fancy way of saying mercenary?" Malcolm let out a soft chuckle, as though he wasn't the least bit offended. "Let them think they had the upper hand." "Not quite," he said, keeping his voice friendly. "Private security for high-risk environments. I consult for agencies and corporations, help train teams for emergency response." Calloway nodded slowly, but there was something in his expression that didn't sit right. "Well," he said, shifting slightly, "we got a call about someone looking suspicious in the neighborhood. Figured we'd check it out." Malcolm raised a brow but kept his tone even. "I see. I wasn't aware walking my dog was suspicious." Calloway smirked. "You'd be surprised what people think is suspicious these days." Miller took a slow step closer, his eyes dropping to Rex, who was still standing calmly but watching the officers with quiet intensity. "That's a big dog," Miller commented, feigning interest. "Trained?" "Yes, sir." "Trained for what?" Malcolm let the question settle in the air for a moment, still maintaining his relaxed stance. He knew where this was going. Obedience. Protection. He's very disciplined. Miller nodded slowly, as if weighing the words. Then Calloway shifted the conversation. "Gonna need to see some ID?" It wasn't a request. Malcolm knew his rights. He could ask why. He could refuse. He could stand his ground. But he also knew exactly what kind of men he was dealing with. "Of course," he said smoothly, already reaching into his jacket, moving slowly, deliberately. Rex let out a barely audible rumble, shifting slightly closer. Calloway's eyes flicked toward the dog, and Malcolm didn't miss the way his fingers twitched near his belt. "Whoa there," Miller muttered, his voice just a little sharper. "You might want to keep that thing under control." Malcolm's jaw tightened just slightly, but his voice remained level. "Rex is fine. He's well trained." Calloway chuckled under his breath. "Yeah, we'll see about that." Something about the way he said it made Malcolm's stomach tighten. It was the tone, the unspoken promise of what was coming next. He pulled his wallet out carefully, holding it up. Calloway barely glanced at it before waving his hand dismissively. "Nah, I think we're going to need you to step over here for a second. Just a few questions." Malcolm exhaled slowly, carefully. "Don't give them an excuse." He gave Rex's leash the lightest tug, signaling the command to stand down. Then he stepped forward, and that was when everything changed. Malcolm stepped forward, moving with deliberate calm, his wallet held out for them to take. Rex's leash remained steady in his grip, his stance unchanged, but the dog's body had tensed just slightly, an imperceptible shift that only Malcolm would have noticed. He could feel the weight of the officer's scrutiny, the way their eyes tracked his every movement, how Calloway's smirk barely masked the sharp edge of control he was trying to exert over the situation. Miller took the wallet with a lazy sort of arrogance, flipping it open like he expected to find something damning inside. His fingers traced over the identification card, his lips twisting slightly before he turned it toward Calloway. "Well, look at that," Miller mused, shaking his head. "We got ourselves a real-life soldier." Calloway took the wallet from him, glancing at it with an unimpressed expression. "Delta Force, huh?" His voice carried that same casual disdain, as if even Malcolm's service to the country wasn't enough to earn a shred of basic respect. "That's supposed to mean something?" Malcolm didn't react. He had learned long ago that men like this wanted a reaction, craved it, fed off it. Any sign of irritation or defiance would only give them an excuse to push harder. So he remained as he was, calm, polite, immovable. "It means I've served," he said, his tone even, measured, "and now I work in security consulting. As I mentioned earlier, Calloway let out a small chuckle, shaking his head before handing the wallet back to Malcolm in a way that forced him to step closer to take it. It was a small thing, but Malcolm recognized it for what it was: a power play. He took his wallet back, tucking it into his jacket without breaking eye contact. "That's so," Calloway drawled, "because what I see is a guy walking around a neighborhood where people don't seem to recognize him. And you know how it is. Folks around here get nervous when they see someone they don't think belongs." There it was. They weren't even bothering with subtlety anymore. Malcolm tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "I do belong. I live here." "Yeah?" Calloway folded his arms, stepping just slightly closer. "Then you won't mind answering a few more questions, would you?" Malcolm remained where he was, neither retreating nor advancing. "I believe I already have." Miller scoffed under his breath, adjusting his belt. "I don't know, Calloway. Something about his attitude don't sit right with me. Guy seems a little tense, don't you think?" Calloway smirked. "Yeah, almost like he's got something to hide." Malcolm took in a slow breath, centering himself, resisting the natural urge to respond. He had been in more hostile situations than he could count, had faced warlords, insurgents, men with bombs strapped to their chests, enemies who wanted him dead and had every means to make it happen. And yet, in all those years, he had never felt quite this level of restraint tightening around him like a vice. Because here, in his own country, in the very place he had fought to protect, he wasn't seen as a man who had served, as a citizen with rights. He was a threat, a problem to be handled, and Rex knew it. The dog had been trained to read situations, to recognize tension, to detect when his handler was in danger. And right now, though Malcolm remained still, Rex could sense that something was wrong. His ears were up, his gaze locked on the officers, his body language shifting from relaxed to alert. Calloway noticed. "You got that thing under control?" he asked, motioning toward Rex with a tilt of his chin. Malcolm tightened his grip just slightly on the leash. "He's fine. He's trained." Miller narrowed his eyes. "Yeah? Trained for what?" Malcolm kept his expression neutral. "Protection. Security. He follows commands." Calloway let out a low whistle, shaking his head. "A dog like that? All trained up to attack? Dangerous thing to be walking around with, don't you think?" "He's not trained to attack," Malcolm corrected, his patience thinning despite himself. "He's trained to defend." "Yeah?" Calloway's smirk widened. "And what exactly does he think you need defending from, huh?" The words sat between them, heavy with meaning. Malcolm said nothing. Miller exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. "I don't know, Calloway. Guy's got a big dog. Won't answer questions. Seems real on edge." He took another step forward, this time intentionally closing the space between them. "I think maybe we need to go ahead and bring him in, just to be safe." Malcolm could feel Rex's tension spiking, the leash pulling just slightly as the German shepherd adjusted his stance, muscles coiled, prepared. He could sense what was happening, could feel the shift, the moment just before a situation spiraled out of control. "You don't need to do that," Malcolm said, his voice carefully measured. "I've cooperated. I've shown my ID. There's no cause to detain me." Miller gave an exaggerated shrug. "Maybe. But see, I just don't like the way this is going, and I think we need to make sure everything checks out." Calloway tilted his head. "I think we're going to need you to turn around. Put your hands behind your back. Just for our safety, you understand?" Malcolm's jaw clenched ever so slightly, but his voice remained calm. "I haven't done anything." "Yeah?" Calloway smiled, stepping closer. "Then you won't mind?" It was a test, a deliberate, calculated provocation. And then Miller reached out, a hand on Malcolm's wrist, firm, insistent. Rex's snarl cut through the air like a blade. Instantly, both officers' hands went to their weapons. Malcolm moved without thinking. A shift of his arm, a fluid motion, redirecting Miller's grip without force, stepping back even as he held Rex's leash firm, grounding the dog before he could move. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," Malcolm said quickly, his voice calm but sharp with authority. "He's reacting to your aggression. Stand down!" But they weren't listening. Miller had already drawn his gun, His face twisted into something Malcolm had seen before, fear disguised as control. "Get that dog back!" Calloway barked, stepping away, his own hand hovering over his holster. Rex was still in place, but his entire body was taut, his instincts screaming, his eyes locked on the men who now posed a clear and present danger to his handler. Malcolm's pulse slowed, his training kicking in, every single variable flashing through his mind in an instant. This wasn't going to end well. Malcolm raised his hands slowly, palms facing outward, his voice even, firm, controlled. "Listen, officers. I live here. You saw my ID. My address is on it. There's no issue." Rex remained still, but Malcolm could feel the leash tightening in his grip, his dog sensing every inch of his unease, every shift in the atmosphere, every note of tension vibrating in the air. This wasn't just some routine stop. It had never been one. And now, with hands near holsters, with voices sharpening, with the slow, creeping dread rising in Malcolm's chest, it was clear that these men had already decided how this was going to go. Calloway's smirk had disappeared, replaced with something colder, more calculating. "Then control your damn dog." Malcolm exhaled slowly, keeping his hands raised, refusing to let the irritation break through, refusing to give them even an inch of what they wanted. "Rex is under control. He hasn't moved. He's on a leash. He's trained, and he hasn't attacked. The only reason he's reacting is because you— I don't give a damn what you think, boy." Miller snapped, his voice cutting through the space between them like the crack of a whip. "I said, control your damn dog." Malcolm's fingers twitched. Not out of anger. No, he had buried that emotion deep, locked it away in the part of him that had learned long ago that losing his temper in moments like these could be a death sentence. It was discipline, calculation, training that told him that right now, every movement, every breath, every single thing he did was a potential trigger for something he couldn't undo. "Officers, please. I am complying," Malcolm said carefully, lowering his voice just slightly, trying to take some of the heat out of the moment. "You saw my ID. You know I live here. My dog is restrained. I am not resisting. So tell me, what exactly do you need from me right now?" Calloway took a step closer, his hand still twitching near his holster, his expression twisting into something Malcolm recognized instantly. He wasn't just looking for compliance. He was looking for an excuse. "You think this is a game?" Calloway sneered, his voice rising now. "You think we give a damn what you think? I don't care who you are, where you live, or what you do. Right now, you're a threat. And that mutt of yours? A damn liability." Miller moved another inch forward, his boots grinding against the pavement. "You want to keep talking? Or you want to do what the hell you're told?" Rex let out a low, warning growl. Malcolm shifted his weight slightly, angling himself just enough to keep the officers in view, while also maintaining his control over Rex. "You're escalating this situation, officers. I am standing still. My dog is standing still. The only aggression here is coming from you. Stand down now!" Miller barked, his voice sharp, commanding, filled with something just a little too eager. Malcolm's heart pounded, not in fear, but in frustration, in the suffocating knowledge that there was nothing he could say, no amount of reason that would shift the path they had chosen for this moment. Calloway gestured aggressively at the ground. "Put that mutt down. Make him sit. Now!" Malcolm kept his movements slow, calculated. He turned his head just slightly, giving a quiet, controlled command. "Rex! Down!" Immediately, Rex lowered himself to the ground, his body stiff but obedient, his ears flicking back slightly, sensing the forced nature of the order. Miller scoffed, shaking his head. "Oh, now you want to listen?" Calloway wasn't satisfied. His hand dropped lower toward his holster. "Leash! Shorten it. Make sure he can't move." Malcolm's jaw clenched, but he obeyed, gripping the leash closer, keeping Rex locked in place, his breathing steady, his focus unwavering. Calloway exchanged a glance with Miller. Something silent passed between them, Something unspoken but heavy. An agreement. A decision. Miller exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders like he was shaking out tension. "We're done playing around. Turn around, hands behind your back." Malcolm stiffened. His voice dropped to something lower, quieter, but still controlled. "I've done nothing wrong." Calloway's smirk returned. "Yeah, and yet, here we are." Malcolm didn't move. He knew what would happen if he turned around. The moment he gave them his back, he'd be in cuffs, shoved against the pavement, and whatever excuse they wanted to use afterward would be built off the fact that he resisted, even though he hadn't. "Turn around!" Miller ordered again, taking a step forward. Rex let out a deep, rolling growl. Both officers' hands shot to their guns. "Control your damn dog!" Miller shouted. Malcolm's voice snapped, sharp and authoritative. "He is controlled." "Not good enough!" Calloway yelled back, his fingers tightening on his weapon. Malcolm felt the shift, the moment before the moment. The hairs on the back of his neck rose. The air seemed to still. The heat of the sun suddenly distant. The world shrinking to just this space, this street. These men who had never once intended to let him walk away from this moment with his dignity intact. Miller moved first. His hand jerked toward his gun. Rex reacted before Malcolm could even process the movement. A defensive instinct. A split-second reaction. The very thing the officers had been waiting for. A single bark. Sharp, quick, a warning. Then the shift of muscle as Rex tensed. Malcolm barely had time to process the movement before it happened. The gunshot rang out, splitting through the air like a crack of thunder. The leash jerked in Malcolm's hand. And then Rex stumbled. The world slowed. The sound of blood roaring in Malcolm's ears drowned out everything else. The officers' shouts, the distant noise of a car engine, the voices of unseen neighbors who had been watching from the safety of their windows. All he saw was Rex's body jerking back, the shock in his dark brown eyes, the way his legs faltered beneath him as his body gave way. "No!" Malcolm's voice didn't even sound like his own. His knees hit the pavement before he even realized he had moved. Rex collapsed against him, his weight heavy, too heavy, and Malcolm's hands were suddenly slick with warmth, with life slipping away far too fast. A low, pained whimper escaped from Rex's throat, his breathing shallow, uneven. Miller still had his gun raised, his face a twisted mask of self-satisfaction and mock surprise. Calloway simply shook his head, exhaling through his nose. "Told you he was a liability." Malcolm barely heard them. Everything inside him went still. Malcolm barely registered the voices around him, barely processed the shift in movement, the shuffle of boots against pavement, the crackle of a distant radio transmission. His entire world had shrunk to the warm, crumpling weight in his arms, to the sharp, ragged breaths tearing through Rex's throat, to the way his dog, his companion, his brother in arms, his protector, was struggling against the inevitable, refusing to let go even as his body failed him. "Stay with me," Malcolm whispered, his voice raw, hoarse, breaking on the edges. His hands pressed desperately against the wound, warm blood seeping between his fingers, pooling onto the pavement, staining his clothes, his skin, the world around him turning red as his vision blurred with something hotter, darker, more consuming than anything he had ever felt before. "I got you, boy. Stay with me, please." Rex's eyes were still on him, still alert, still searching his face as if waiting for a command, waiting for direction. But there was no battlefield, no mission, no threat to eliminate. Just pain, just confusion, just the deep, unspoken bond between them unraveling too fast for Malcolm to stop it. He could feel the tremors racking through Rex's body, the rapid, panicked rise and fall of his chest, the small, strangled sounds escaping from his throat as if he wanted to respond, to tell Malcolm he was still fighting, that he would always fight. But the strength was fading, slipping like sand through Malcolm's grasp, like something he had no power to hold on to. "You're okay. You're okay," Malcolm muttered, his hands shaking as he stroked Rex's head, his fingers slipping over the damp fur, cradling his dog's face as if he could keep him grounded. Keep him here. You're strong, buddy. Just hold on. Just, damn it, Rex! Don't you quit on me! The officers were talking. He could hear them,